I am worried about the future value of comics 50 years from now, so to say. Maybe not even that long. And I'm even talking about like Silver and Bronze Age stuff. Golden Age, and this is why. When we talked about that, when I talked about how over the last 30 years or so, up until 2020, 2019, comic books were on a healthy, 15 to 30 degree angle increase over the years for the most part. And that shows you that there's precedent that comic books in general, and again, I'm talking about key comics. I'm not talking about dollar bin stuff from the 80s or 90s or 2000s plus that depreciates in value. I'm talking about key comic books. And when they did this in 2019, the only thing that's going to keep it up at this is what I just said, the influence of social media. And if just a handful of people still want to FOMO out to keep this misrepresentation of what a fair market value is, that has nothing to do with supply and demand, right? But that 15 to 30% degree increase over the last 30 years or so, you know what that depended on? People born mostly between the Great Generation, all right, but more so the Boomer generation, the Baby Boomer generation. And I think it goes Baby Boomers, Generation Y, or is it X? Generation X, maybe. Because I think Boomers were technically Y. No, X, Y. Damn it. It is X, right? X, Y, Z. It's Boomers, Generation X, and the Millennials. Those three generations are the generations that were born into the golden era of superheroes. Not the golden age of comic books, but the golden era of superheroes. If that makes sense. When superheroes were becoming an ingrained part of pop culture, of American culture. Like there is no world without a Superman or a Spider-Man, right? I mean, they are so culturally ingrained in our existence. The baby boomers were kids during the late 50s, during the late golden age, and when the silver age started taking off. Gen X were kids in the 70s and early 80s, when you had Wolverine and all these characters and Frank Miller doing Daredevil and all these amazing things, leading into Secret Wars and all that. And then in the 80s, the millennials, during Jim Lee's X-Men and Cable and Deadpool and Deathstroke, all these cool new age characters of that time, Venom, the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man, going into the 90s. Now, I'm not saying the generations after that haven't been brought into comics. Anybody that says people don't collect comic books anymore, that's not true. But it is true that it's becoming less and less. Even people that get into pop culture and superhero culture, the collection of floppy comic books is becoming less and less. And I'm not just talking about primary market, I'm also talking about the secondary market. Boomers are starting to die out. Sorry to say. I mean, life, we're mortals. It's scary. I know. I'm technically a millennial. I'm the beginning of the millennials, I think. It depends on who you ask. Some people might call me Generation X. I mean, I've lived over half my life probably at this point. So in 40 years, our comic books, even silver and bronze age books that keep a premium value, going to be an afterthought. That's something kind of scary to think about. Now, you're always going to have your Action Comics number one, Superman's number ones, AF-15s. that are selling for millions of dollars that are going to be like, people that, wear their, mink robes and sip their tea, and they go to auction houses and spend millions of dollars on comic books because they're American heritage at this point, right? Those are American heritage. But is somebody that buys an AF-15 or Action 1 for millions of dollars in the same way that they would buy abstract art piece for $2.3 million, or some vase that they pay $1.8 million for, and it's like, it's a piece of glass. What's so important? Those are the people that are buying those books. Are they going to care about the first appearance of Deathstroke that came out in what, 81 or 82? Are they going to care about the first time, Wolverine's first solo series by Frank Miller? Like, I'm bringing up keys that aren't like huge thousands and thousands of dollars keys, but that are still keys that are still valuable to our generations. That's a scary thought. There is a real viable argument to say two things, and this is what I'm going to close the show out on today. The secondary market is being propped up right now. It's not market money, and again, I said I was naive and not wrong. I'm not going to say I was wrong about anything, because I've always stood in defense of specific things on my channel, and I still do. If you're going to come in here and be like, market manipulation, and throw all these buzzwords out there, I'm still going to say no. I get where you're coming from, but let's stop. These are sensationalized buzzwords, and it distorts our ability to critically think and actually educate us on what it really is. If we use buzzwords to sensationalize issues without really understanding what the words mean, and words matter, all we do is spew emotion rather than logic. There is a true, valid argument to say that the secondary market right now is being propped up by a non-organic public perception of a falsified fair market value of comic books. And that pertains heavily on probably Copper Age and up, and of course anything that has to do with live action and so forth. And there is also a valid argument to say in 40 years, when all the boomers and the Gen X or millennials are either dead or in retirement homes, not buying comics anymore, not sitting on YouTube arguing with each other over stickers, what is it going to do for the majority of our collections? Even key books that aren't considered blue chip American cultural heritage. Something to ponder. The only way that this is sustainable is if YouTube and social media and all these platforms, if we keep using it 5, 10, 20 years from now. And we might. And if that's the case, then the fair market values that we see for these books on the market right now, these crazy prices that we see LCS is pricing their books, hey, everyone can keep doing that as long as the niche crowd that is this social media driven comic book community keeps allowing it to happen. It doesn't matter if 200,000 collectors disagree, don't want to pay these prices, and never will, as long as 1,000 of them are at least keeping up the perception. Because when have you or I seen anywhere close to 1,000 copies of some spec book or a hot book on the market at once? Comic books aren't loaves of breads on the shelf in your supermarket. Comic books aren't boxes of Trix cereal on the shelf in the supermarket. And again, but this doesn't mean that they're scarce or rare. It just means what's available at one time on the market is going to be a small enough amount for a handful of people to drive that price up if they simply can't wait on buying that book. And that's how we get dollar bin books shooting up to $200 in the matter of 48 hours. Not because it's an organic fair market value, not because the majority of comic book collectors think it's worth that much, not because of supply and demand, and not because it's rare. None of those things.